It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, January 24th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is feeling like the Flyers and wanting to put that Rangers game behind us.
Looking forward to Saturday?
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. To keep up to date with our episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter, and of course here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are going to get into Aleksei Kolosov getting sent down, the Anthony Richard call-up, Olle Lycksell, all of that later in the show, but we want to dive straight into Flyers versus Rangers here because man, that was a doozy of a game. 6-1 was the final score. And I think there was definitely some defensive problems in this game. And Torts identified one, typical to the Flyers. They would normally block a ton of shots to prevent those sorts of tip-in goals that the Rangers were able to get. They didn't do that this game.
Okay, sure. I mean, there are going to be games you can't block 30 shots. Like, again, the order of what Torts is looking for the rest of the season is too high. Like, we've talked about that. But they also let guys get behind them. And that has nothing to do with block shots. And that's how allows the tips in the first place. And this is something that has been a problem. Even when the Flyers defense has been playing better, they do let guys into the crease. It makes it very hard on the goalie. And you see these tip goals. And so teams are just like, you know what? Let's just shoot from far away and we'll get somebody inside and we'll try and create some havoc that way. And it's working.
Yeah, it's a fair strategy. And I noticed, pretty early on in the game that, normally the Flyers won't let more than one guy near the crease at any given time. And there were two guys at or near the crease for significant portions of this game. And I think that was a huge part of it. And you're right. That's what leads to those deflections up front is when you have two guys there, somebody's going to get a chance, right?
It's the NHL. You can't, once you do that, you're really risking it. But then we have to talk about the special teams because the power play is 1 for 12 lately, and 6-on-4 was pretty disastrous. And again, it's just like if you're not going to practice these things, or it looks like you're not going to practice these things when the games are important like this, you don't have a chance of coming back when you can't execute that way. And they didn't execute that way.
Yeah, and I would say that, especially with that 6-on-4 towards the end of the game, that I thought it was just a continuation of how they'd been playing for the duration of the game, that it wasn't necessarily connected to the pattern of special teams.
I agree.
I thought that it was really just like they were very discombobulated with the puck.
It almost didn't seem like they had an advantage at one point. Like they weren't spread out enough.
They just had very little puck control.
Correct.
So even when they did get chances throughout the game, and this kind of led into the power play as well, like they just weren't quality chances in terms of the puck being flat on the ice and getting a solid shot behind it. And I think that had a lot to do with it and just kind of bled into the power play for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And look, like Rodrigo Abols had some good moments on the ice. I wish the Flyers would identify that he'd be good on the power play. Even if you didn't have him near the net, he wins corner battles. Like there's things you have to do on a power play to get, great shots and eventually goals. And he could do that, but they're not going to do that.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with you on that because toward the end of the game, Brink got sat from the power play and Anthony Richard got put in there. And thank God he's okay, by the way. That was very, very scary.
But it was Richard,
But
not Abols. That's my thing.
yeah, correct. But that's where I'm going with this, is that they are open to putting somebody different on the power play if it's not working right now. And so they're trying Anthony Richard this time around because of his speed. But I don't think that precludes Abels from getting a shot. I think it just adds him to the list. And Torts was impressed with the fourth line. Garnet Hathaway talked post game about those two guys, and that, he was just trying to fit in with the two of them, right? Because
Yeah,
they have more experience playing together, but that he really saw like some great work from both of those guys. And then Torts follows that up and says, Abels is giving him a lot to think about in terms of future lineup decisions. Now, is that sending a message to existing guys,
sure.
or praising Abels, or both? Probably both, right?
Probably both. Yeah, no doubt. There's another thing too, if we know the NHL is a league, you have to play at pace.
Hmm.
So it's hard to play at pace and expect to block 30 shots. It's almost an impossibility to do that for a full game. So you get a situation where the Flyers were exhausted. Like 5 minutes into that third period, they were completely exhausted. And then they had some of
Right.
those shifts where they got guys trapped out there. That happens, but they were completely exhausted, and the Rangers were playing keep away. You have to decide before the game starts which you want to do, because nobody plays at pace and blocks like 30 something shots every game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and I think there's a healthy middle ground here, and maybe they didn't block enough of the shots tonight, but there is a ceiling too, and
Yeah.
I think there's sort of this middle ground that would have been helpful in this particular game. I do feel like we have to talk about Egor Zamula
Hmm.
specifically, because there was a short stint in the first period where he got benched a little bit.
Yeah.
He came back in the second period and played, I believe, the first shift of the second period. So it was a very short benching, but he definitely had his struggles in that first period, right?
Yeah. No doubt. But I mean, he's played really well for a number of games. So again, I don't think there's a problem there. I don't think they're going to sit him or anything. I don't think they're going to call up anybody. Like, he deserves a chance to be able to, have a bad game. Like, it happens. Jamie
Yeah.
Drysdale didn't have a particularly good game either, but whatever. He just didn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of guys did not
Sure.
have a good game in this one. But I want to talk about Travis Konecny too, because I felt like in this game, and I've noticed this, several times going into the like last several games, with him choosing the pass rather
Yeah.
than the shot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And they even talked about it on the broadcast, which I think is a rarity that they were going to bring that up. But there was a point in the third period, he had a straight shot at the net and he tried to make this perfect feather pass. And it's like, you can't always make that pass. Sometimes it's better to take the shot. Maybe you get a rebound, maybe somebody goes to the net, or maybe it just goes in. I mean, there's enough guys. I mean, Cam York misses the open net perfectly wide
Right,
open, shoots it right
right.
over. Like, there's enough of those things
I mean,
happening.
Panarin missed an open net too,
Sure.
but different
No, but
situation.
different situation. But I'm just saying, when you have those kinds of things happening, he's got to just be selfish and shoot it on net like he just does.
Yeah, yeah. Now, one of the things that we talked about on yesterday's show specifically was face-offs, right? We dug into
Yes.
all the numbers, who's taking them, what situations, and so I'm just curious, what was your take on the Flyers face-offs and related to that conversation?
I think it was okay. I don't think it was awful. Uh, but I thought it was bad. I don't remember who was the center late in the game, but Konecny had to take a face off, an important one, because they got thrown out of the circle. And
Right.
that's a tough call for Konecny, like, to be able to make, so that was one where it hurt them because they lost possession, late in the game. But that doesn't always happen.
Right. Now, we talked about situations and matchups, but
Yeah.
interestingly, Rodrigo Abols was 7-1
I'm not
in
surprised.
faceoffs at 5-on-5,
Yeah,
right?
I'm not surprised. I mean, he's good at it, and that is something we talked about. The Rangers' size, though, on the fourth line gave the Flyers trouble all night long. Like,
Yeah.
that was a big problem for him. Edstrom did have a goal, but they were really, really taking advantage of the Flyers matchup there. And that's one where, as you get down the stretch now and points become more important, teams are going to play more physical, and they are going to try and play some of their bigger players getting ready for the playoffs. Like, this is the changeover that happens in the NHL.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that this is definitely in some ways just one of those games, right? Because the Rangers were getting the tips, the Flyers weren't. But the Rangers also put themselves in a slightly better position to score than the Flyers did, and it's something they have to just sort of, like I said to begin the show, wipe the slate clean and move on because they got to face the New York Islanders with all the baggage around that
Yeah,
tomorrow or tonight.
yeah, tonight. And so yeah, they definitely do have to wipe it. But they can't afford too many more of these losses. That's the thing. It's just the way the season's going to be.
Yep, that is for sure. All right. Well, we're going to talk about that Islanders matchup as well as the transactions that took place with all the roster changes and what that means for everybody, including Aleksei Kolosov, coming up next. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or a comedy. And one of my favorite things I recently went to using Game Time was a Broadway show. And now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I was looking for tickets to Wicked, which I hadn't seen in a long time, but given the movie, I wanted to remind myself how it ended. So Game Time found me an amazing deal using Game Time Picks. I could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was even more impressive. It offers great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all in pricing shows the total cost upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL with $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. On our Monday show, we're going to talk about Flyers versus Islanders round two. We've got a home and home versus the Devils to discuss and so much more. We'll also have our nemesis of the week. Now, talked at the top of the show quickly about the transactions the Flyers made on Wednesday, early evening. And obviously, like the biggest part of it in that was sending Aleksei Kolosov down to the Phantoms. And, you could say, well, that solves the three goalie problem. But does it, Russ?
Mm, I mean, for today, I mean, we have to see what happens with this. Is all going to be about personal interaction. Like, it shouldn't come down to that, but I think it's going to, and we're going to see how Kolosov feels like he's treated and see if he is enjoying what he's doing. And if he isn't, he's probably going to bolt. But if he is, then he'll stay. Like, I think that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I think it is going to be key to have like really strong communication between Dillabaugh and the coaching staff in Lehigh Valley, which is something we've talked about that we're not really sure what goes on there behind the
Or
scenes.
Brady
Uh,
Robinson.
yeah, or with Brady Robinson as
Yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah.
And I think that it's going to be a time will tell thing. And I think, if he finds some success down there and he gets to play more, that's the most important thing, I think, from a development perspective, is getting him in games. And I think it kind of provides a twofold positive benefit. Kolosov gets in games, which is what we need, for him to develop. And then I think it'll help Lehigh Valley as well. I
Oh, there's no
think,
doubt it will help Lehigh Valley. They'll get a boost.
right, because obviously with Cal Peterson being injured, like it's just important for them to have a stable number one goaltender, and
Yes.
Aleksei Kolosov can be that.
Yeah, he could be that. He needs to play tons of games. He really does. Like, this is an opportunity for him to be a workhorse, and let's just hope he enjoys the AHL. And if he does, then that's great. I just say it like that. Like, I understand. I could, people are probably like, you know, tired of it and probably want me to take a hard line, and I could just say, "Hey, kid, this is your job. Do it." But these people are humans, and I just don't know how that part of it's going to play out.
Yeah, I think that'll be a key part of it. It's a 3-game weekend for the Phantoms this weekend, so hopefully he gets to play in 2 out of those
That's
3
what the
games.
plan should be. Yeah.
Yeah, for him to play Friday and Sunday, and hopefully he will do that. We will talk about that, of course, on our Phantoms Tuesday show next week. And the other part of the transactions that took place on Wednesday was the call up of Anthony Richard and Olle Lycksell being sent down. And I think, I have mixed feelings about this decision. I
Hmm.
love the call up of Anthony Richard. I do believe that they gave it a little bit of a longer time because of the injury, wanted to make sure he was okay.
Hmm.
He's fine. It seems like he's fine, and it does make sense to call him up and to have Abels and Richard up with the Flyers. I think it gives the Flyers more flexibility in terms of who's available, who's not, where to place these guys. I think Lycksell is definitely only a winger, can't play center. And so, like, from a logical perspective, I get it, and I think it makes sense, right?
Yeah, in that regard, it makes sense. I mean, look, Lycksell, that's 6 games. That might be the last 6 games he ever gets with the Flyers. Like that's just the way it is. So, you know, this is hockey.
Yeah, and it's disappointing, and I am a staunch Ali Lycksell supporter, as are you, Russ.
Hmm.
We've talked about it, and I think the thing with him is we have said that he needs a longer stretch of time
Yeah.
as a tryout to really
And
know
we're
what
not
you
saying
have.
he's a guaranteed going to make it, but it's like you
Right.
don't really know when you're just playing these short stints.
Right, and for him in particular, we've seen him like, it takes him a little while to ramp up, but
It
once he
does.
gets there, he can be a scoring threat on a very regular basis, and I firmly believe that's what's going on here with him. Now, unfortunately, in the NHL, you are not afforded that opportunity very often. And you look at his stats, well, he hasn't even really had shots on goal in
Hmm.
his most recent call up. And so, yeah, I mean, I get it, Flyers. Like, you got to do what's best for you in this
Hmm.
situation. And Richard has proven himself at the NHL level this season already to a large degree. So again, I get it. I think it's the right decision in the long run, for the Flyers. I just still have this little nagging thing about Lycksell and giving him a proper chance.
Yeah, think that, and this isn't like Jason Akerson syndrome. It's not. I never had that. I
Yeah.
don't think. I think there's you just want to see a guy get more of a shot. But the only thing about Richard coming up now there's expectations because he did have a little bit of a performance, and you don't know if he's going to match that. Like that's the only thing here is it's going to be a little tougher this go around for him.
Yeah, and I think he can handle it. I think, he's had NHL experience in the past
He
before
has.
he was with the Flyers, and so he knows how this goes and he knows what it takes to stay up with the big club, especially, given the injury circumstances with Ryan Paling. I think
Hmm.
there's a role for him now that maybe wasn't going to be there as long term. We'll see what happens with Paling, but
Right.
there's an opportunity here, and I think he and Abels are really up for the challenge in terms of, showing what they can do and that they're the ones that can fill those roles.
Yeah, I think it's important to note if Lycksell were a center, he'd probably have more of a shot here.
Yeah,
Like you
absolutely,
were
and that's
saying,
why I said,
yeah, and
yeah.
you said it, but I want to kind of like reemphasize it.
Yeah. So, we'll see how it goes down the line. Now, down the line, of course, means today when the Flyers face the New York Islanders again in the second half of this back-to-back in New York. And of course, Max Tsyplakov is still suspended for this game, so we won't see him this time around. We'll get to talk about him and his return potentially more next week.
Right.
Uh, but since we last saw the Islanders, they've won 2 games in a row. They won against the Blue Jackets 3-1. They defeated the Sharks 4-1. They seem to be on more of an upward trajectory. And even the game against the Flyers, I think, for them wasn't a significant dip in their play over this stretch that they've had as of late. And so I think we're going to see a slightly more confident and maybe slightly vengeful Islanders team.
I think that's fair to say. I see that Horvat and Barzell have really picked it up, and Horvat's getting closer to the numbers, maybe to like earn that contract. He's a really good guy, good player, good leader, but I just felt like that contract was going to be a lot to live up to. But lately, he's been hot. The goaltending's good. Like they're on a good roll. Like even now, I wouldn't want to face Hogberg. Sorokin's got it back, but I wouldn't want to face
Hmm.
either one of them, to be honest, because Hogberg, he's great stats, like he
Yep.
really does. Uh, and and if the Islanders were a little better, he probably would have a better. I think it was 2-2 record. But whoever they face, it's not going to be a gimme. So this is just one of those divisional matchups where, yeah, you got to try and play mistake-free hockey. I would like to see the Flyers go to the net more because if you don't, and if it's, let's say, Sorokin, he gets comfortable in there, the game gets harder quickly.
Yeah. Now, one of the pieces that we saw that will be missing this time around for the New York Islanders is Noah Dobson.
Yeah, that's a
He
big
is,
piece.
yeah, and he was took a big hit from Sillinger in the game Monday night they had against Columbus, and he was a huge, huge part of the Islanders' blue line, right?
Oh yeah, he's massive. So they have enough veterans that they could play a certain style. They're going to be missing that guy bringing up the puck and all of that offensive, that little extra offensive spark. They won't have that, but they'll still play meat and potatoes, and they still have Pulock, who, if he takes a bigger role because of him being out, still has a massive shot that you have to always sort of respect. So there is still that.
Yeah. Now, they are in a very interesting position, similar to the Flyers in terms of what to do at the trade deadline. And on the Islander side, there's some rumors around Brock Nelson. We are going to get to those trade rumors and how this kind of relates to what the Flyers are going through coming up next.
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Again, I just keep going with the Chiefs here until they prove me wrong. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate and variety of bets keep every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right. So the Brock Nelson trade rumors, most recently I saw from Frank Saravalli that there were 5 teams involved in these potential discussions. The Minnesota Wild, which that would be dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Winnipeg Jets, the Devils, the Bruins, and the Canes. Now, 2 of those 5 teams being in division, I gotta like downgrade those possibilities a little bit, but also it's Lou Lamoriello, so who knows, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's right now. Lou's got a lot of pressure on him. And as much as he loves Brock Nelson and the fans love him, and he's a really good player, and, I can go back to his draft year and remember just, you could see the development in him. He's got almost 300 goals with him, 288 goals. It's a lot, but he's 33. So now you're getting to the point. He is from Minnesota. So, of course, Minnesota would always come up naturally in that conversation. I could see the Bruins doing this. I don't know who the Bruins are going to give in return because you'd have to probably match up salaries, but I could see the Bruins being interested. They need help down the middle. And so them or the Wild, I think, would be the teams that the big teams, what the Islanders should be looking for. And again, this is going to be a big tell as to what the future direction is because we all know they need a retool. But are they going to retool now or are they going to wait till after the season? If they don't retool now, then they're going to take somebody back with a little bit of age and similar dollar figure.
Mhm.
If not, then you're going to take a prospect and a pick. So it'll be interesting to see how they do this.
So the big picture thing here with a potential Brock Nelson deal and for the Islanders and how it relates to the Flyers is given this kind of mushy playoff race, we're in right now, teams are having to potentially put off these decisions closer to the trade deadline if they're going to pull the trigger because, are we still in this playoff race? Do we need Brock Nelson if you're the Islanders in order to push through and actually make the playoffs? Is that something we're willing to give up? In terms of this year, in order to make the best deal for us. And so, like a lot of these teams, like I would say Detroit, I would say the Flyers, I would say the Islanders, are in a similar boat here.
They are. I'm going to just talk about the teams ahead of the Flyers, and Columbus is going to be a buyer. Ottawa is going to be a buyer. Montreal is going to be a buyer. They pretty much said that.
Yeah.
Boston, I still think Boston's going to be a buyer, even though the media is right. At some point, they have to retool also, but they're probably not willing.
This year, they're
not
probably
gonna
not
do it.
willing to do it.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're going to be a buyer, and the Rangers are going to be a buyer. So all those teams are going to be buyers, and that is going to make it a lot harder for the Flyers because at that point, you're not only if you are trying to get better to make the playoffs, you're going up against all those teams, and then do you really want to trade assets? That's why Danny's probably not buying.
Right. And I would not suggest that the Flyers were going to be buyers in any
No, a
scenario
hockey
here.
trade is always up for discussion. That's different.
Right. So it'll either be a hockey trade or a selling trade, right?
Correct.
So it's do they stay put or maybe do a hockey trade or do they sell? And I
Right.
think that's where the Islanders and the Flyers are in a similar boat here because the Islanders are not going to be buyers either, no matter what. They're deciding to stay put or to sell.
Right.
And I think, you have to look at the big picture about what assets you want and building toward the future. And with the Flyers having so many draft assets in this upcoming draft, like to even get higher end draft picks for the following draft or the year after that is not a terrible thing in this case
No.
because we already have the picks for this year,
Right.
right?
Right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, again, if I'm Danny and I'm looking at this draft, I still could trade one of those picks, those first round picks from this draft with something else to get somebody else, even in a selling situation.
Yeah.
If you're trading Lawton in a deal and you trade a first, you might be able to get a decent player from somebody that is fairly young. I would look at those things because I don't think they need 3 first round picks in this draft. I don't think it's going to support that. So I think it's one of those situations
Yeah.
where now I might try and trade one of those picks to a team that doesn't have a pick.
Yeah. I think that's the fair way to approach it here. And I think, you know, I mentioned that a couple of the possibilities for Nelson were in division. I don't think the Flyers are going to make an in division deal. That's
No,
for
they're not going to
sure.
do that.
But if there's like a team in the Western Conference who wants to buy into the first round or buy a second pick in the
Yeah.
first round, I think it it's possible. I
And look, I
mean,
don't want to
maybe they
crush
want to sell it back to the Avalanche or
right.
something.
I don't want to crush anybody's dream of trying to bundle these picks and getting into a certain spot in the draft. There's always a 2% chance that could happen, but as we see, it's pretty rare.
Yeah. So we'll see how all of that plays out for the Flyers and the Islanders. But in the meantime, we do have a pretty tough week ahead to look forward to for the Flyers. I mentioned the home and home with the Devils, and then we have the Islanders at home. So it's just going to be a flat out war next week, right?
Yeah, this is it. This is like a big deal going into sort of like we're not quite at the Four Nations yet, but getting closer to the Four Nations and then closer to the trade deadline.
Yeah. So, and you look ahead to the following week as well. They hit the road for a mini road trip to play the Colorado Avalanche and Utah out in Utah for the first time
Yeah.
ever. And then they'll come back to some Metro games before the break. So, like it just doesn't get easier.
No,
But
this is
but the
hard
good,
and it's getting more compressed. Excuse me, the schedule because of the Four Nations.
yeah, I think so. But I do think that we are absolutely going to know what's up with this playoff race by Four Nations. Like
Will we?
I
I don't
think it's
know.
going to be
Last year
clear.
we didn't. I don't know. Maybe.
I think we'll know from all the breadth of teams. I think we'll probably be down from like a 6-team bunch down to like a 3 or 4 team.
Okay.
bunch.
I mean, that's sort of knowing. So, all right, I'll be on board with that.
Yeah, we may not know what the Flyers result will be,
Right.
but we'll know in terms
It's
of,
still
I
going to
think,
be a math equation the rest of the year,
yeah,
but that's for sure.
yeah, we shall see. But yeah, big important games ahead for the Flyers to talk about. We will be back on Monday to do that. Plus, we'll have our nemesis of the week. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great weekend, everyone.